The Wanderer's Call. The signal pulsed through the void, a whisper in the endless dark. In the observation chamber of the Meridian, senior observer Kilara watched the energy readings with growing fascination. For 3 centuries, her people had drifted between the stars, searching for salvation. Now, something different had appeared on their sensors, something that defied their understanding of physics itself. Specialist Ven, are you seeing these patterns? Kilara's inner eyelids flickered rapidly, a sign of intense concentration among her species. The holographic display before her showed impossible things. Energy signatures that seemed to bend space itself, artificial gravity wells that shouldn't exist, and radiation patterns that suggested technology far beyond anything they had encountered. The younger scientists' tendrils quivered with excitement. Yes, senior observer, the signal originates from an unexplored sector, approximately 30 light-years from our current position. But there's something else. The signal isn't meant for communication. It's weapons fire. Kilara felt her heart skip a beat. In their long exodus, the Meridian sensors had detected countless signals, but never anything like this. Most spacefaring races they'd encountered used conventional plasma weapons or antimatter warheads. This was different. Controlled, precise, yet devastating in its potential. "Show me the source," she commanded, her voice steady despite her growing excitement. The holographic display shifted, zooming in on a distant star system. It was unremarkable at first glance, a yellow dwarf star with several planets orbiting it. But as the sensors focused on the 3rd planet, Kilara's breath caught in her throat. The world was blue and green, wrapped in white clouds and showing signs of advanced civilization. But what truly captured her attention were the ships in orbit, crude by their standards, yet somehow emanating power signatures that shouldn't be possible with such primitive-looking technology. "They're testing weapons," Ven observed, his voice filled with wonder. "But look at the precision, the control. They're containing forces that should tear their ships apart." Before Kilara could respond, a new alert flashed across their screens. Her blood ran cold as she recognized the signature. "Dark swarm vessels," she whispered, 3 light-years out and closing fast. The dark swarm, the very reason her people had fled their home galaxy. For millennia, these relentless hunters had pursued them across the cosmos, destroying everything in their path. The Meridian and its sister ships carried the last survivors of their civilization, barely 50,000 souls in total. "They must have detected the same signals we did," Ven said, his tendrils now rigid with fear. "Senior observer, we should leave immediately. We can't risk." "No." Kilara's decision surprised even herself. "We've been running for 3 centuries. Our ships are failing. Our people are dying. Whatever this civilization is, they've achieved something remarkable, something that might give us a chance." She turned to the communications array, her fingers dancing across the controls. "Alert the Council. Tell them we found something unprecedented. And set course for that star system, maximum speed." As the Meridian changed direction, Kilara studied the sensor readings more closely. The civilization they'd discovered seemed young, barely into their space age. Yet they wielded forces that the greatest minds of her people had only theorized about. How had they achieved such mastery so quickly? The answer came 3 days later as they intercepted transmissions from the planet. Kilara and the Council watched in amazement as images filled their screens, broadcasts showing the history and culture of a species that called themselves humans. "They're incredible," one council member whispered. "Look at their history. They went from primitive flight to space travel in less than a century. Their technological growth is exponential." But it wasn't just their technology that caught Kilara's attention. As they decoded more transmissions, a picture emerged of a species defined by contradiction. They were capable of both tremendous violence and extraordinary compassion. They fought wars among themselves, yet united in the face of greater challenges. They were simultaneously primitive and sophisticated, peaceful and warlike. "They're survivors," Kilara realized aloud. Everything about them, their technology, their culture, their very evolution. It's all shaped by adaptation and survival. They don't just overcome obstacles. They grow stronger because of them. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. For centuries, they had sought a way to defeat the Dark Swarm, searching for advanced civilizations that might help them. Instead, they had found something else entirely. A young race that might lack their refinement but possessed something far more valuable: the ability to face impossible odds and emerge victorious. A new alert shattered the silence. The Dark Swarm fleet had changed course, accelerating toward the human system. They too had recognized the potential threat, or opportunity, that humanity represented. "We have to warn them," Kylara insisted, facing the council. "The humans don't know what's coming. The Dark Swarm will destroy them before they realize the threat exists." The council's leader, an ancient being named Xerith, raised his hand for silence. "Our law forbids interfering with developing civilizations. We cannot. Our laws were written when we had a civilization to protect," Kylara interrupted. "Now we have nothing left but our lives and our knowledge. These humans, they've achieved in decades what took us millennia. They don't think like we do. They don't fight like we do. And right now, they might be our only hope." Silence filled the chamber once more as the council deliberated. Finally, Xerith spoke again, his voice heavy with the weight of decision. "Send the signal. But understand this: if we reveal ourselves to humanity, we commit ourselves to whatever comes next. There will be no more running." Kylara nodded, hope filling her hearts for the first time in centuries. As she prepared the first contact message, she watched another human weapons test on the sensors. The impossible energies danced across space, controlled and directed by ships that looked like they belonged in a museum by her people's standards. Soon, those same ships would face the greatest threat in known space. And somehow, Kylara knew, they would surprise everyone, including themselves. Children of Steel. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of the UES Hyperion, watching as the alien vessel emerged from faster-than-light travel. The ship was beautiful, all sweeping curves and iridescent metal that seemed to shift colors as it moved. It made humanity's most advanced warship look like a crude collection of angles and armor plating in comparison. "Their tech is at least 3 centuries ahead of ours," Captain Rodriguez commented from his station. "Those energy readings, I've never seen anything like it. And yet they're running from something," Chen replied, her eyes fixed on the alien vessel. The first contact message had been clear, both in its warning and its desperation. An enemy was coming, one that had chased these refugees across galaxies. The bridge crew fell silent as the communication system activated. A holographic figure appeared, tall and elegant, with multiple arms and flowing tendrils where hair would be on a human. "I am Senior Observer Kylara of the Wanderer vessel Meridian. On behalf of my people, I thank you for accepting our request for contact." Chen stepped forward. "Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Fleet, we've reviewed your message and your warning. I have to ask, why us? Your civilization is clearly more advanced. What could we possibly offer against an enemy that defeated you?" Kylara's expression shifted in a way Chen couldn't quite interpret. "Admiral, we've been observing your weapons tests. Your method of manipulating gravitational fields, it's unlike anything we've seen in 12,000 years of space travel. How did you achieve it?" Chen exchanged glances with Rodriguez. The gravity lance technology was their newest breakthrough, a weapon that could create localized gravity wells to tear enemy ships apart. It was still experimental, dangerous even to the ships deploying it. "Necessity," Chen answered simply. "We needed a weapon that could defeat kinetic barriers and energy shields. Traditional weapons were too easy to defend against, so we tried something different." "Different." Kylara repeated the word as if it held special meaning. "Yes, that's precisely why we're here. My people, we built our civilization on careful advancement. Each technology was perfected before we moved to the next. But the Dark Swarm, They don't fight conventionally. They adapt, evolve, find weaknesses we never knew existed. We couldn't keep up. The Admiral's tactical mind was already racing. But you think we can? We've been watching your broadcasts, studying your history. In less than 300 years, you went from primitive combustion engines to faster-than-light travel. You don't perfect technologies. You iterate, improve, discard what doesn't work, and try new approaches. It's chaotic by our standards, dangerous even, but effective. Before Chen could respond, alarms blared across both ships. Rodriguez's hands flew across his console. Multiple contacts. Massive energy signatures at the edge of the system. They're like nothing in our database. The Dark Swarm. Kylara's voice carried a tremor of fear. They found us sooner than we expected. Admiral, you must retreat. Your weapons, while impressive, aren't ready for. How many ships? Chen interrupted. 3 capital ships, dozens of support vessels, Rodriguez reported. They're launching some kind of swarm formations. Energy readings are off the charts. Chen's jaw set in a hard line. Captain, initialize the Tai-Tian network. All ships, battle stations, and get me a direct link to Surface Command. We're implementing Case Omega. Kilara's hologram flickered with concern. Admiral, you don't understand. These aren't simple warships. The Dark Swarm are living weapons. They consume technology, adapt to any attack. They've destroyed civilizations far more advanced than. With all due respect, Observer Kilara, Chen's voice was steel. You came to us because we're different. Now you get to see how different we really are. She turned to her tactical officer. Deploy the gravity lances. All ships. Execute formation Delta 7. And someone wake up Dr. Wagner. Tell her she gets to test her pet project ahead of schedule. The bridge erupted into activity as orders were relayed. Through the viewport, Chen watched as her fleet moved into position. The ships were ugly by Wanderer standards. Blocky, over-engineered, bristling with weapons. But they were humanity's ships, built not for elegance but for survival. What is Tai-Tian? Kylara asked, watching the human fleet's movements with growing curiosity. Tactical Intelligence Tactical Assault Network, Chen replied. Warfare systems linked across all our ships. They react faster than human crews, coordinate attacks in microseconds. The kind of thing that would probably horrify your scientists. You trust artificial intelligence in combat. Trust? No, we expect them to try to kill us eventually. That's why we keep them isolated, give them limited control. They're tools, nothing more. Dangerous tools, but necessary ones. Kilara's expression showed something between horror and fascination. And Dr. Wagner's project. A thin smile crossed Chen's face. Something we've been working on since we detected your ship entering the system. We took your faster-than-light drive signature, and well, let's just say we've made some modifications to the concept. The Dark Swarm fleet was visible now. Massive organic-looking ships that seemed to shift and pulse with internal energy. As Chen watched, they launched clouds of smaller craft, each one adapting and changing shape as it moved. All ships, hold position, Chen commanded. Let them come to us. And Observer Kilara, you might want to watch this. You came looking for something different. Time to see what humanity's chaos can really do. The space between the fleets lit up as the battle began, humanity's first real test against an alien threat. But unlike the Wanderers, who had fought with precision and perfection, humanity would fight as they always had, with innovation, desperation, and the kind of controlled recklessness that came from knowing you were outmatched, but refusing to accept defeat. The Dark Swarm were about to learn why humans had survived every catastrophe their world had thrown at them. They were about to learn why, sometimes, the most dangerous enemy isn't the most advanced. It's the one crazy enough to try the impossible. The storm breaks. The void between the fleets erupted in chaos as the Dark Swarm launched their first attack. Thousands of smaller craft swarmed forward, their organic hulls rippling and shifting as they adapted to the space around them. On the Hyperion's bridge, Admiral Chen watched with calculated calm. "Titan analysis of enemy capabilities," she asked, her voice steady. "Their ships are biomechanical," Rodriguez reported, "capable of real-time evolution. Each attack we launch, they adapt to counter it. The AIs are predicting a 97% chance our conventional weapons will be useless within minutes." Kilara's hologram flickered with concern. "This is how they defeated us. Every strategy, every weapon. They learn, they adapt, they overcome. You cannot win through force alone." "Who said anything about force alone?" Chen's lips curved into a slight smile. "Dr. Wagner, are you ready?" A new hologram appeared. A disheveled woman in a lab coat, her eyes bright with barely contained excitement. "Ready, Admiral. Though I should note this is completely untested and probably violates several laws of physics." "Noted. Execute Operation Babel." Across the human fleet, strange devices activated, cobbled together arrays of technology that looked more like scientific experiments than weapons of war. They had been built in the few hours since the Wanderers' arrival, based on observations of their FTL drive signatures. "What are you doing?" Kilara asked, watching as energy readings began to spike across the human ships. "Your FTL drives create localized bubbles of altered spacetime," Wagner explained, her hands moving rapidly over her controls. "We'd noticed they leave a kind of wake in reality, like ripples in a pond. We thought, what if we could amplify those ripples?" The Dark Swarm was nearly in range now, their front line beginning to fire strange organic projectiles that writhed through space. But before they could reach the human fleet, reality itself seemed to shudder. "Babel devices active," Wagner announced, creating interference pattern. Now, the space between the fleets twisted as conflicting space-time distortions collided. The Dark swarm ships suddenly found themselves fighting against waves of altered reality, their adaptive abilities struggling to cope with fundamental changes in the physics around them. "Phase 2, Chen commanded. "All ships, execute gravity lance strikes through the disruption fields." The human fleet's primary weapons activated, but instead of firing directly at the enemy, they launched their gravitational distortions into the already chaotic space. The combination created a cascading effect. Regions where gravity shifted wildly from zero to crushing forces in microseconds. On the tactical display, thousands of Dark Swarm craft began to break apart, their adaptive hulls unable to compensate for the fundamental forces being warped around them. But the victory was short-lived. The larger capital ships pushed forward, their massive forms somehow stabilizing the space around them. "They're adapting," Rodriguez warned. "Main force approaching. Energy signatures suggest they're preparing something big." Chen nodded. "As expected, Dr. Wagner. Phase 3 ready. But Admiral, the calculations suggest this could affect our ships too. We haven't had time to properly shield." "Do it." Wagner took a deep breath and activated her final sequence. The jerry-rigged devices on the human ships began to pulse in a complex pattern, each one slightly out of sync with the others. The effect rippled outward, creating a web of intersecting space-time distortions. "Remarkable," Kilara whispered, watching as the fabric of space itself became a weapon. "You've weaponized the very thing that allows faster-than-light travel. The implications." She was cut off as the Dark Swarm capital ships opened fire. Massive beams of energy lanced out, but as they passed through the distorted space, they bent and twisted, some even looping back on their sources. The organic hulls of the enemy ships began to warp and tear as conflicting physics strained their adaptive capabilities to the breaking point. But the human fleet wasn't unscathed. Warning alarms blared as the space-time distortions affected their ships as well. Hull plates buckled, systems flickered, and crew members fought against shifting gravity. Multiple hull breaches, Rodriguez reported, structural integrity failing across the fleet. We can't maintain this for long. We don't need long, Chen replied, her knuckles white as she gripped her command rail. Titan, tactical analysis. The A's response was immediate. Enemy adaptation rate is decreasing. Their biological components are showing signs of systemic failure. Estimate 30 seconds until critical breakdown of their organizational structure. They're not just failing to adapt, Wagner added, her voice filled with academic excitement despite the situation. The constant changes in fundamental forces are damaging their ability to adapt at all. We're not just hurting them, we're breaking their evolution itself. The Dark Swarm fleet's formation began to crumble. Ships collided as their navigation systems failed to compensate for the changing physics. Others simply broke apart, their biological components unable to maintain cohesion in the chaos. Observer Kilara, Chen called out, her voice strained as the Hyperion shuddered around them. I believe you mentioned something about unconventional approaches. The Wanderer could only watch in amazement as humanity's desperate gambit paid off. The species that had driven her people across galaxies was being defeated not by superior technology or perfect strategy, but by weapons cobbled together in hours, based on theories that violated the very rules of space itself. All ships, emergency shutdown of Babel devices, Chen ordered as the last Dark Swarm capital ship began to break apart. Damage report. The list of damages was extensive. Every ship in the fleet would need major repairs. But they had achieved what the Wanderers had thought impossible. They had found a way to defeat an enemy that could adapt to any attack. As the chaos of battle subsided, Kilara finally found her voice. How? How did you know this would work? Chen's answer was simple. We didn't. But humanity has a long history of doing impossible things simply because we didn't know they were impossible. Sometimes the best weapon isn't the most powerful one. It's the one your enemy never saw coming because no sane species would ever try it. The battle was over, but all present knew this was just the beginning. The Dark Swarm would return, and next time, they would be ready for humanity's tricks. But that was fine. Humans were good at coming up with new ones. Forged in fire, the aftermath of humanity's first victory against the Dark Swarm transformed the Sol system into a hive of frenzied activity. Orbital shipyards, once dedicated to building conventional warships, now buzzed with hybrid vessels that merged human ingenuity with Wanderer technology. In a secure facility on Mars, Admiral Chen watched as Dr. Wagner and a team of Wanderer scientists worked on their latest project. The integration of our FTL principles with your gravity manipulation technology is unprecedented, Senior Observer Kilara admitted. Her tendrils moving in what Chen had learned was a sign of excitement. Though your methods still terrify me. That's because you perfect technology, Wagner replied, not looking up from her work. We weaponize it before we fully understand it. Speaking of which, how's the new drive core looking? A holographic display showed a hybrid engine that seemed to defy conventional engineering. Wanderer crystalline matrices merged with human gravitational arrays in ways that should have torn the device apart. Instead, it hummed with barely contained power. The test results are beyond our projections, one of the Wanderer scientists reported. By combining our space-time manipulation with human gravity lance technology, we've created something entirely new. The potential applications. We'll have to wait. Chen interrupted as her neural implant flashed a priority alert. We've got incoming. Long-range sensors detect a Dark Swarm fleet, at least twice the size of the last one. They'll be here in 48 hours. The room fell silent. Everyone knew this was coming. The Dark Swarm never stayed defeated for long, and their ability to adapt meant the same tricks wouldn't work twice. Are the new ships ready? Chen asked. Wagner gestured to another hologram showing the fleet under construction. We've completed 15 vessels with the hybrid drives. They're not pretty, but they're functional. The Titan integration with Wanderer quantum processors is still glitchy, but the ships will have to do. Chen cut in. What about Project Phoenix? This time, it was Kilara who answered, her voice carrying a mix of awe and apprehension. The theoretical work is sound, but what you're proposing, it goes against everything we know about safe technological development. Safe technology didn't save your civilization, Chen reminded her. And it won't save Earth, Dr. Wagner. The scientist pulled up a new display, a massive construct taking shape in high orbit around Jupiter. The Phoenix platform is operational. We've successfully merged Wanderer phase technology with our quantum entanglement systems. In theory, it should allow us to create a cascading chain of space-time events that will. In English, Dr. Wagner grinned. We can make space itself fight for us. Not just local distortions like before, but massive coordinated changes in the fundamental forces of reality. The Dark Swarm adapt to specific threats. But how do you adapt when reality itself becomes your enemy? Chen studied the technical readouts. The Phoenix platform represented the ultimate fusion of human and Wanderer technology and their philosophies. The Wanderer's precise understanding of space-time mechanics combined with humanity's willingness to push boundaries had created something unprecedented. The risks are extreme, Kilara warned. If the calibration is off by even a fraction, we could tear a hole in space-time itself. The damage could be catastrophic. More catastrophic than letting the Dark Swarm destroy another civilization. Chen asked quietly. Your people ran for centuries. Mine won't run at all. Before Kilara could respond, new alerts flashed across the displays. The Dark Swarm fleet had accelerated dramatically. They would arrive in less than 24 hours. They've adapted their drives, Wagner noted. They're learning faster than before. Chen's expression hardened. Then we'll just have to learn faster. Begin evacuation protocols for all civilian centers. Move the Phoenix platform into final position, and get me a direct link to every ship captain in the fleet, human and Wanderer alike. As the orders were carried out, Chen turned to Kilara. Your people spent millennia perfecting their technology. Mine spent millennia perfecting the art of survival. Apart, we're vulnerable. Together, we might just be unstoppable. The next few hours were a blur of activity. The hybrid fleet moved into defensive positions around the Phoenix platform. Emergency protocols activated across the solar system as humanity prepared for what could be its greatest battle, or its last. In her quarters aboard the newly christened UES Prometheus, Chen reviewed the battle plans one final time. The Dark Swarm would expect them to try something similar to their last encounter. They would be ready for spatial distortions, for gravity weapons, for anything they had seen before. What they wouldn't expect was the sheer insanity of what humanity and the Wanderers had cooked up together. The Phoenix platform wasn't just a weapon, it was a statement, a declaration that sometimes the only way to win was to change the rules of the game entirely. Admiral, Kilara's voice came through the comm system. The Wanderer ships are in position. Our crews, they're nervous but ready. For the first time in centuries, we're not running. Chen smiled slightly. Tell your people to watch closely, observer. You came to Earth looking for something different. Time to show the Dark Swarm just how different we can be. The countdown to battle had begun. In less than 12 hours, humanity would either change the face of warfare forever or join the long list of civilizations the Dark Swarm had consumed. But unlike those who had fallen before, they weren't fighting with just technology or strategy. They were fighting with the combined strength of two civilizations, one that had mastered the laws of physics and one that had mastered the art of breaking them. The Dark Swarm were about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemy isn't the one with the most advanced technology. It's the one crazy enough to rewrite the rules of reality itself. Dawn of the New Age. The Dark Swarm fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel like a tide of living shadow, their biomechanical ships writhing with adaptations born from their previous defeat. But the scene that greeted them was nothing like they expected. Instead of a defensive line of warships, they found a seemingly empty solar system. On the bridge of the Prometheus, Admiral Chen watched the enemy's arrival through enhanced sensor feeds. Status of the Phoenix platform. Ready, Wagner replied from her station. Quantum entanglement network is stable. All ships report successful integration with the platform's control systems. And the bait. Kilara's hologram flickered as she reported from her vessel. The Meridian is transmitting on all frequencies. As far as the Dark Swarm can tell, we're a wounded ship trying to flee. Their behavioral patterns suggest they're already moving to intercept. Chen nodded, watching as the massive enemy fleet altered course, heading for the apparent easy target. The Dark Swarm had evolved to be perfect predators, always seeking the weakest prey first. It was a strategy that had served them well for millennia. Today, it would be their undoing. All ships, maintain quantum silence, Chen ordered. Let them commit to the attack. The combined human wanderer fleet hung in the shadow of Jupiter's largest moon, their hybrid drives running in a specially modified stealth mode developed by the unlikely partnership of the two species. The ships themselves were barely recognizable, organic curves blended with angular human engineering, creating vessels that looked like they belonged to neither civilization. Enemy fleet is approaching optimal range, Rodriguez reported. Their adaptation patterns are extraordinary. They've developed countermeasures for every strategy we used in the last battle. Good, Chen replied. Because we're not using any of those strategies, Dr. Wagner. The scientist's hands flew across her console. Phoenix platform is spinning up, beginning quantum entanglement sequence. Now. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The Dark Swarm fleet continued their approach toward the seemingly vulnerable Meridian, their weapons charging. Then, almost imperceptibly, space itself began to change. What we learned from our first encounter, Wagner explained, her voice tight with concentration, wasn't just about how to fight the Dark Swarm. We learned how their adaptation works. It's not just biological or technological. It's based on quantum probability manipulation. They literally shift through possible configurations until they find one that works. And that's their weakness, Kilara added. They can adapt to anything they can predict, anything that follows the normal laws of physics. But they can't adapt to something that changes those laws themselves. The Phoenix platform's true purpose became clear as reality itself began to fragment around the Dark Swarm fleet. But unlike the localized distortions of their previous battle, this was something entirely different. The quantum entanglement network linking the human wanderer ships to the platform wasn't just creating spatial distortions. It was rewriting the fundamental constants of physics within the target zone. Multiple quantum state collapse detected, Rodriguez announced. The Dark Swarm ships, they're trying to adapt, but they can't, Wagner finished. Because there's nothing stable to adapt to. We're not fighting them with weapons anymore. We're fighting them with impossibility itself. The scene in space became almost incomprehensible as areas of altered physics collided and merged. Dark Swarm ships found themselves in regions where the speed of light itself had changed, where gravity operated according to different rules, where the very concept of cause and effect became uncertain. Their legendary adaptation ability turned against them as they desperately tried to evolve to match conditions that were themselves constantly evolving. Ships began to tear themselves apart as different sections adapted to different, incompatible states of reality. Enemy fleet is in disarray, Rodriguez reported. Their command and control structure is breaking down. But, Admiral, we're detecting massive energy buildup in their capital ships. They're attempting some kind of desperate countermeasure. Chen's expression remained steady. As expected, all ships execute final phase. Dr. Wagner. Initiating quantum cascade, Wagner confirmed. May whatever gods exist have mercy on the laws of physics, because we sure won't. The Phoenix platform's power output surged to maximum as the entire human wanderer fleet activated their hybrid drives in perfect synchronization. The quantum entanglement network that connected them buzzed with impossible energy as they created not just distortions in spacetime, but actual, temporary changes in the fundamental constants of the universe itself. The effect was catastrophic for the Dark Swarm. Their ability to adapt, which relied on scanning all possible configurations and choosing the most advantageous, suddenly faced an environment where the possible itself became impossible. Ships began to dissolve as their quantum probability fields collapsed, unable to find any stable state of existence. Energy levels in the enemy fleet are critical, Rodriguez warned. If they detonate, they won't, Chen stated firmly, because we're not just destroying them. We're erasing the very possibility of their existence in this region of space. Dr. Wagner. Quantum cascade reaching critical threshold. Wagner confirmed. Final sequence initiating. Now. The space occupied by the Dark Swarm fleet erupted in a display that defied description, not an explosion, but a fundamental rejection of reality itself. When it cleared, nothing remained of the enemy ships except scattered particles that could no longer organize themselves into coherent matter. Silence fell over the bridge of the Prometheus as the sensors confirmed what everyone could hardly believe. Total victory. The Dark Swarm, the terror that had haunted the Wanderers for centuries, had been completely eliminated. It's over, Kailara whispered, her voice filled with wonder. After all this time, they're actually gone. Chen allowed herself a small smile. Not just gone. We've proved something today that will change everything. The laws of physics aren't absolute. They're more like guidelines. And when two civilizations work together, combining caution with creativity, perfection with improvisation, we can rewrite those guidelines. Wagner finished. The Phoenix platform and this victory, they're just the beginning. Think of what we could accomplish now, working together. As the combined fleet emerged from Jupiter's shadow, the first rays of sunlight caught their hybrid hulls, making them gleam like beacons in the darkness. They were no longer just human ships or wanderer vessels. They were something new, something that represented the best of both civilizations. The war was over, but a new age was just beginning. An age where humanity's chaos and the wanderer's precision would forge a path to the stars that neither species could have achieved alone. An age where the impossible would become possible, not through perfect technology or desperate gambles, but through the combination of both. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, other civilizations would soon learn an important lesson. In a universe of infinite possibilities, sometimes the most powerful force isn't the most advanced technology or the most perfect strategy. Sometimes it's the willingness to look at the fundamental laws of reality and say simply, we can do better than that.